Okay, um, we're ready to get started. Um, Brandon, would you like to read the disclaimer real quickly?
Sure. And let me just make sure, can everybody hear Tanya?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank
Great,
you.
thank you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start this evening's Community Police Review Board meeting. And just a word about our modified meeting procedures in this hybrid in-person / Zoom format. And this is just to make sure that we're compliant with open meetings requirements. And we'd ask that all board members and participants state their names and titles when they speak. Various members of city staff and our chair, Tanya Salvini, is in person this evening. We must also state our names when we speak. All motions need to be stated clearly, and after a motion is made and seconded, the chair will call on board members individually to provide their vote. The chair will announce whether or not the motion carried, as well as a count of the vote. The agenda for this evening contains instructions about how to provide public comment, and so we will go by those guidelines. The chair will call for in-person public comment if there is anybody in person, and we will assist anybody at the podium who does wish to speak. Likewise, we will also look for hands to be raised during public comment portions of the agenda through the Zoom room. And so just a last word, a reminder for everybody to please mute yourselves when you're not speaking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Do we have anyone for public comment? We have no one in the audience. Do we have anyone online? I see Alex with us. Alex, I was wondering if you would like to give public comment now or wait until after an agenda item?
I will wait till after the agenda item.
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, we have no minutes to approve. Thank you. No public comments. We'll go ahead and go to C, agenda items. And before we get started, I'd just like to make a comment about expectations in the group for civil and respectful behavior throughout the time we're together. And I think we're ready to go on to agenda item number 1. Our intent for meeting tonight is to do some work on the ordinance. And so what we had talked about at our previous meeting was to move through and take some time to look at feedback that was provided by the staff, feedback through the Lawrence Listens survey, and some of the summaries, and work through some of those, and then start working on some revisions and proposed revisions that we want to make on the ordinance. I'd like to point out that Marie Taylor is not with us this evening, but she is not able to be with us, but she has provided her comments to Ms. Littleton. And with that, we'll go ahead and open the floor for discussion. This is Chair Salvini recognizing Jenny Robinson.
Board Member Robinson, how do we want to move through the Lawrence Listens feedback? I know those were already reviewed at a previous meeting, but how do we want to work through this in kind of a systematic way?
It's open to the floor. Any recommendations, Jenny? I've got a couple. Okay. Stephanie, do you have any?
This is Board Member Stephanie Littleton. I I guess just suggest that maybe we go back. We had made a list of some things that we particularly wanted to discuss. I have a few notes. I'm not sure if I caught them all, but some of them that had been pointed out wasn't necessarily all to the survey. But anyway. Trying to look at my list. So it was in regard to the criminal background check, about the opt-in language, Suzanne Valdez, the issues in the ordinance to that for criminal investigations, all complaints versus OPA complaints, some unfunded mandate concerns noted in the city's memo, and hiring of an outside investigator. Those are some of the notes I have.
Sure, and I'm going to guess that you generated those from all the sources that were mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I think what we talked about doing for this meeting was revisit all of those sources of information and resources, and then just kind of start moving through the primary portion of the ordinance, correct?
Yes, and also that was kind of the list that came out from the end of our meeting, from the last meeting.
Okay. Very good. Okay, why don't we go ahead and start with the first on the list that Stephanie provided, if that's okay. Jenny, is everybody agreeable to that? Okay, perfect. Stephanie, can you repeat that again, and then we'll go with that?
You want to just start with the first one, which would be in regards to Marie Taylor's discussion she would like to have regarding the criminal background check.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
Sure, and let's talk about that in reference to where it is in the ordinance, the draft ordinance, okay? And so I'm on the ordinance, and I'm on page 7, I believe. And that would be section 2506, qualifications, section B, item 1. Okay.
Yeah, under this board member Sentinel, and yeah, under the qualifications. Just going to go through kind of some of the notes that Marie has provided for us to have for discussion. In regards to the survey comments.
Mm-hmm.
So the board's proposed ordinance addresses the most onerous aspects of eligibility requirements by removing the laundry list of past criminal acts that would bar board membership. As we've discussed, our criminal justice system has been shown to have a disproportionate and negative impact on communities of color and other marginalized people. No other city board requires a criminal background check. The question for the board is, what purpose does the criminal background check serve? Does that purpose outweigh the potential chilling effect on fostering more diverse participation on the board? Are there other ways to address the same concern? For example, if the concern is conflict of interest for any pending criminal case, would the city's ethics ordinance address that concern without the need for a blanket criminal background check requirement? If the purpose is to root out potential bias against law enforcement, what is the assumption that we are making about people who have served their sentences and their rights or lack thereof of rights to participate in improving community police relations through board service? If the board decides to keep this background check requirement in the draft, should the ordinance articulate the purpose for that requirement and establish some parameters on the use of the information being obtained? So do we want to, I guess we need to discuss, do we want to leave that in there or remove that? And I would also kind of point out, going back to the city attorney's memo dated July 1st that was presented at our last meeting. They did answer to that question. Can the revised ordinance be more specific as to what exactly disqualifies a person from being on the board and potentially remove that requirement for background check? Their feedback basically says a requirement that board members undergo a criminal background check may be more restrictive, but it also can be eliminated. It is a question for the board to consider in determining what is most practical.
Okay, at this point, why don't we open up discussion about this item? Chair Salvini calls on Jenny Robinson.
This is Board Member Robinson. So I'm of the belief, I'm in agreement with everything that Marie has stated in her notes. I believe that it's a needless requirement that would disproportionately affect people in historically oppressed communities. And definitely, I love what she said about what does this say about how we think people who have served time and completed their sentences, what does this say about how we think their outlook is regarding the police? I mean, I agree. I think we should take that out of the requirement.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Any other comments or questions by the board?
Well, this is a board member, Stephanie Littleton. I concur to almost exactly what you have said, Jenny, and what, the points that Marie has raised. I would lean towards taking that out. There's just not a need.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie and Jenny, for your comments. This is Chair Salvini. I want a point of clarification here. Are we going to go ahead and make motions to clean this up tonight? I think that was the intent originally at the last meeting. I just want clarification. Jenny?
This is Jenny Robinson. I believe, yes, we wanted to start making these decisions tonight,
Okay.
This meeting.
Right. Thank you, Jenny. And I think that the intent was certainly that, but not to finalize it, but to clean it up, to use as a tool to have continued discussions with stakeholders. Is that correct? Just want to make sure I'm accurate here. Okay, thank you. All right, so there has been, is there a motion for that change in the ordinance then?
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, I think Bill did have his hand up. He wanted to.
I'm sorry, Bill. Okay, Chair Salvini calls on Board Member Graybill. Bill, you might need to unmute.
I got nothing.
Did I miss something? Bill, I'm sorry, we didn't hear you.
I have nothing now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there a motion? Jenny Robinson.
I'd like to motion that the requirement for people applying to be board members have a criminal background check, that be removed from the ordinance.
There's a motion to strike that in the ordinance. And that's, calling my draft back up. That's under qualifications. That's specifically section 12506, subtitle B, in terms of foregoing qualifications for all appointments to the board. And item 1, submit to a background check, and that's to eliminate that from the ordinance. Is there a second?
This is board member Stephanie Littleton. I do second that motion.
Okay, it's been Moved and seconded. Open for discussion. I see no discussion. Do you see? Excuse me, I've got recognizing Brandon McGuire.
Yes, Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. I just wanted to also note for the board's consideration a reference to background checks in subparagraph C of the same section.
Thank you. Okay, would someone like to amend the motion or have a separate motion? Bill?
This is Board Member Grable. I'd offer a motion or an amendment to the motion to also delete subparagraph C of that subsection.
Very good, thank you. The motion is on the floor for more discussion with the amendment. No discussion. The motion made by Board Member Robinson, seconded by Board Member Littleton, and amended by Grable. Ready for a vote? Board Member Grable, yay or nay?
This is Board Member Grable, yay.
Board Member Littleton?
Board Member Littleton, yes.
Board Member Robinson?
Board Member Robinson, yay.
Board Member Salvini, yay. The motion passes with 4 yays. Okay. Is there another issue to address from you, Stephanie? And then hold on just a second. Bill had his hand up. Calling on Board Member Grable.
This is Board Member Grable, and I don't know if the next item on Board Member Littleton's list is under that subsection, but if it is not, I would like to note, I'd like to come back to subsection 2 of that subsection B for later discussion. If it is not, we can come back to it later.
Okay, thank you. To clarify that and make sure I got it right, Bill, that would be under qualifications, sub B, and item number 2?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie?
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, why don't we move to that since we're right there? That makes sense.
Okay, very good. Bill, do you want to go ahead and bring forward your remarks?
Yes, ma'am. This Board Member Grable, subsection 2 provides in essence that a board member has to sign a confidentiality agreement and promise that anything they learn will be in relationship to the receipt of a community member's complaint will be kept confidential and not disclosed to any person outside the governing body, city manager's office, city attorney's office, or the department. It seems to me like if somebody submits a complaint and asks a board member, what happened to my complaint? Under that provision, that board member would be prohibited from telling that complainant that it was received and sent on or whatever it was done with it. And I think we ought to include the complainant in that list of people that are entitled to information regarding the receipt of the complaint.
Okay, this is Chair Salvini. Board Member Grable has suggested reconsideration in section 2506 under qualifications, section B, item number 2, to add the complainant. Is there a discussion on that?
This board member, Stephen Littleton, I would simply agree with him that that should be included. That does just, it does make sense. So that would make total sense that they're entitled to that. So.
Okay, does anyone see any strengths or some issues with regard to that? Board Member Jennings.
Board Member Robinson, I just wanted to, since I'm not a lawyer, I wanted to see if we need to get feedback from Tony Wheeler to see if you have any feedback about that.
This is City Attorney Tony Wheeler. I think we can look at that provision and the board's desire to have some information provided to the complainant. There may be a situation where not all information is provided to the complainant to protect the privacy of other potential parties, including witnesses, et cetera. So if there's a desire to have some information shared with the complainant, we can look at that and provide some language.
Okay, any other comments? Concerns? Any action?
This is board member Stephen Littleton. So as I read back through that, Tony, I see that concern of agreeing that all information reviewed and discussed. So we could make some adjustments to that from what I'm hearing. Would be possible. Is that what I understand?
City Attorney Tony Wheeler. Yes, I think there should be some thought to whether all information should be disclosed. Of course, this is the ordinance of this board. So if the board wants to make whatever recommendation it wants to make, and then staff can always identify issues if and when it goes to the city commission. So I'm not trying to say that you can't write it a certain way. I'm just saying that on the spot here tonight with this new issue raised, that's my impression.
Thanks, Tony.
This is Chair Salvini recognizing Board Member Graybill.
This is Board Member Graybill. When I was to including the complainant information regarding the receipt of the complaint, I did not say anything about all information. I would make a motion that we amend that subsection B2 to allow the complainant to have information regarding the receipt of the complaint. Now that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
This board member, Stephen Littleton. Thanks, Bill, for the clarification, because I was just kind of getting hung up once I was listening to some of the feedback from Tony about the all in there, and if that was a concern, but I wasn't catching how you were really, but it does make sense going back to the receipt of the complaint. So I'm definitely in favor of that.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you for the clarification, Board Member Graybill. Any other questions, concerns? Do we want to make a motion? Board Member Graybill?
Madam Chair, I've already made that motion.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Board Member Robinson?
Board Member Robinson, Bill, would you mind repeating that motion? I just want to clarify, are we asking to be added to that section that we just want to share with the complainant the confirmation that a complaint has been received? Is that what we're asking to add?
I will try to read it to you on the fly, and I don't know if it's going to be good or not, but here's what I would suggest. Sign a confidentiality agreement agreeing that all information reviewed and discussed regarding the receipt of the community member's complaint will be kept confidential and not disclosed to any person outside the governing body, city manager's office, city attorney's office, or the department, or any other person whom the officers deem necessary to receive such information. In essence, that would take out the language right on the third line, starting at or review of OPA investigation. You would just take that out. Does that answer your question?
Jenny?
Did you hear that?
I did hear that. This is Board Member Robinson.
Oh,
Yeah, so you're saying we should just take out the section, that last bit that you said, did you say just take out or review of an OPA investigation?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then did you want to add, oh, sorry, my dog's about to bark. Did you want
And
to
add the complainant to that list of people.
Okay. And then do we need to have a separate section then to address confidentiality around the review of an OPA investigation as well? Or are we able to just take that out?
All I'm addressing is this particular subsection of the ordinance.
Mhm.
Try to keep this as simple as possible.
Is there a concern by the board? This is Chair Salvini, of eliminating the content of or review of an OPA investigation?
This is Board Member Robinson. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so, trying to piece this out here, I would think that it would need our confidentiality regarding OPA investigations would need to be addressed.
This is City Attorney Tony Wheeler. I agree if you strike those phrases that Commissioner Graybill brings forward. It does seem to allow the all information regarding the OPA investigation to be shared with the complainant. Again, I could be misinterpreting his motion, but just that's what I'm hearing.
Okay. This is Chair Salvini. So we have a motion on the floor, and I'm going to attempt to frame it here. And that is by a motion by, and thank you, Tony, Board Member Graybill. And that is to add, and the third sentence, receipt of the community member's complaint. And you are intending there to make sure that the complaint is has the ability to receive information that the complaint has been received? Is that?
Okay. Perhaps if I repeat the motion, I don't know if we've got anybody recording what my motion was, but I'll be glad to make it again if that's necessary.
Well, how about if you do that, but I think it'll be important to add what you're wanting to eliminate, and that's or review and of an OPA investigation.
All I'm suggesting is we eliminate, I think, 5 words out of the present wording. Now, if there's not a second to the motion dies for lack of second. There has been no second. If we're going to discuss it, let's get a second first.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
And if not, let's move on to the next item.
Chair calls on Board Member Robinson.
Board Member Robinson, I think that it's a great idea, Bill, to make it clear that we do want to be able to share with the complainant that a complaint has been received. I think just talking about how to word it. So do we need to second it so we can have a discussion about that wording?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Yes,
then
please.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, open for discussion. Bill, this is Chair Salvini. I have a question. What is the intent of the motion, the amendment? Or, I'm sorry, yeah, your motion.
My motion, the intent of it is that the complainant be able to get information regarding all information reviewed or discussed regarding the receipt of a community or their complaint. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all, it's not let them, take them out, give them all the information out of the police files. It's simply to allow them to understand what we did.
I completely agree with you. I'm then wondering about eliminating and striking out or review of an OPA investigation, what that does to your motion?
Striking out what?
The words,
Can you direct me to what you're
Sure.
referring?
Okay, the third sentence, starting with or review of an OPA investigation.
Yes, ma'am. What about that? What's your question?
My question is, earlier you were wanting to strike that.
That's correct.
Okay. And what's the intent
All I
there?
want to do to that. That's my motion, is to strike those words.
Board Member Robinson?
This is Board Member Robinson. Do you think the same intent could be achieved by adding that step into the process of how we receive a complaint? Instead, because I see what you're saying, Bill, to just take out the OPA investigation stuff so that we're not sharing that with the complainant. But I think there's seems like there's other legal language in there that needs to stay. So I wonder if we could make sharing receipt of complaint with complainant part of the complaints process, I guess is what I'm asking. If that would be an easier way to do it.
This Board Member Grable, I don't agree with that. I think the easiest way to do it is take those 5 words out of this particular section. But, if you, and says right now tonight, while we're discussing it, while we're supposed to be here and prepared to discuss it, then I'll be glad to do it, whatever you propose, if you've got something specific in mind.
This is Board Member Stephanie Littleton. So I do understand the concern that's been explained of taking the open investigation wording out. I'm just wondering if we wanted to keep it within number 2 there, we may have to reword, because your point is well taken, Bill, to be able to get the receipt of the complaint, all the information from the receipt of it, and separating that from an OPA investigation per se. So maybe we just have to rewrite that one, make it a whole separate piece of that. And I think that's where Jenny was kind of going with that. So that way we don't remove that and open up for the complainant to be able to get all information from an OPA investigation.
Board Member Graybill?
Board Member Gray, what it says is it requires each member on this board to sign a confidentiality agreement in which they will agree that all information reviewed and discussed regarding the receipt of a community member's complaint, and then what I'm suggesting we take out, or review an OPA investigation, and this is what it requires, will be kept confidential and not disclosed to any person outside the governing body, city manager's office, city attorney's office, or the department. And I am suggesting, and we put in there, or complainant. If you do that, it seems to me what we do is allow a complainant to ask the board or a board member, what happened with my complaint? And that is it. I don't understand I don't see how you're going to make it any better. If somebody's got some specific proposal, I'll be glad to consider it.
I have a question for Tony Wheeler. Tony, is your understanding of that section with regard to the review of an OPA investigation, does that mean that the person coming on board signed the confidentiality agreement and they don't share that information at all, right?
City Attorney Tony Wheeler, I believe that this was language that was in the original ordinance, perhaps, and it was at that time, the ordinance dealt with appeals, and complaints were not accepted directly. They were received by the department, I believe. So this language refers to the confidentiality agreement that new members sign when they join the board, and it is designed to keep receipt of the complaint confidential and to keep the OPA investigation confidential, except for the parties listed in that subsection. I understand Commissioner or Member Graybill's intent to have receipt of the complaint shared with the complainant. I think that is certainly an amendment that could be made. I believe that by striking the words "or review of the OPA investigation" in this section that deals with what the confidentiality agreement covers, that removing those words would inadvertently, it sounds like, inadvertently make available the OPA investigation to the complainant. So I think that Commissioner or Board Member Jenny Robinson has suggested an alternative, which would be to perhaps create a new section or add a section regarding sharing information with the complainant that the complaint has been received.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I am leery of removing that "or review," those words there. I am very much in support of what Board Member Graybill has sentence.
Paragraph that would be appropriate to be added with, in the spirit of the intent that Board Member Graybill provided it, just as Ginny affirmed. Thoughts?
Board Member Robinson?
This is Board Member Robinson. I'm just wondering if the qualifications section is the section that makes the most sense to list that.
I would agree with you. I'm feeling like that would be for the complainant's rights. And I'm not sure that's in here, but I do think that that should be included in here. It's just taking some time to figure out where we could fold that in the whole document. Bill, is that something that you'd be willing to look at?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. Is there anyone else interested in doing that? Board Member Robinson?
This is Board Member Robinson. I'm happy to do that. I don't know if we want to bring it up to the board at our next meeting, or I can definitely go through the ordinance and try to find a logical spot for that before the meeting, and then we can discuss it then, if that sounds good.
Okay, that sounds very good. So it's tabled to our next meeting. We've got a motion and a second on the floor for discussion. We do need to vote, and the motion was explicit about that section and included striking out in that section. I'm scrolling back up, I'm sorry. Included the specific language about the review of an OPA investigation. So there is a motion on the floor and a second, and we'll go ahead and any more discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, yay. Oh, excuse me. Robinson?
Alex Kerr has his hand up.
Oh, thank you. Alex?
Can you call for public comment, or can you, or is there, or do you want to
Sure.
wait, or because
Alex?
I just
Sure.
okay,
If it's okay, we're going to go ahead and take the vote.
okay, yeah,
And then as soon as we're done with the vote, we'll go ahead and go for public.
okay,
Okay.
yes,
Thank you.
okay, yeah,
All right, we're ready for the vote. All those in favor, yay. All those opposed, nay. Board Member Grable?
Nay.
Member Robinson?
Board Member Robinson, nay.
Board Member Salvini, nay.
The vote is 3 nays, 1 yay. The motion fails. I do want to make sure that, Jenny, if you will make a note to make sure and bring this up to the next meeting, so we don't lose the intent of Board Member Graybill. Okay, thank you. Okay, calling on Alex Kerr.
Hello, good evening, Alex Kerr, community member. Due to this time and date of this special meeting of the Community Police Review Board, the community and I had little time to discuss the specific agenda item. And due to the purpose of this meeting, I cannot speak openly without getting more support from the community. A lack of community feedback would violate my duties as a member of the community. To put it in simple terms, I don't have enough people for me to tell me what they think, for me to participate in public comment specifically on these motions that the Community Police Review Board does. I don't know what the correct word is to use. Specifically, I do not have enough people for me to specifically. I do not have enough people for me to. I don't have enough people. Sorry about this. I don't have enough people that told me what do they want to see happen on this specific agenda item. So, and apply specifically for this agenda item, letter C, agenda item 1, number 1.
Thank you, Alex Kerr. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move back to the work that we've done to bring the table today to do some more work on the ordinance. Stephanie, do you have any more items from Board Member Taylor?
Board Member Stephanie Littleton, nothing additional from Marie Taylor, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Do you have any more items to bring forward?
Board Member Stephanie Littleton, from our list from the end of last meeting, I have several things that we can certainly discuss. And it goes back to a couple of the memos provided by the city attorney's office. One in particular is regarding all complaints that we have in our revised ordinance. If we'd like to discuss that, maybe.
Okay, and let's turn to that part and that section in the ordinance then. And I'm going to go to specific duties of the board, 2504. And let's see. Would that be on, let's see, under A, number 10? And that's more process.
Board Member Stephanie Littleton, under purpose of the board, it does specify third, the board shall review all community member complaints and all completed investigations of community member complaints.
On the purpose? Okay. And that would be 2503, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that would be under the third in the lower part of the paragraph.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Robinson?
This is Board Member Robinson. I believe there's a lot of feedback from the board that we don't want to review all complaints, and I was someone who was heavily pushing to review all complaints because of my concern that citizens might not identify a complaint as being racially or other bias-based policing. So I want to recognize the opinions of my fellow board members. And also, if we do decide to just review racial and other bias-based policing complaints, I would like to bring to at least the Public Communications Board, I forget the name of the subcommittee that we created, but I believe additional community education related to identifying racial and other bias-based policing complaints would be a really important piece of that puzzle. I would hate to just say, no, we're only reviewing those, but then not provide additional education for our community about how to self-identify those, I guess, if that makes sense. But I definitely want to hear what the other board members are thinking about that.
Right. This is Chair Salvini. And so what I'm hearing is to modify all to really focus on the bias-based complaints. And then also what you were all talking about would probably be under the duties of the board, where you were mentioning the education piece. Would probably be another specific duty under the board and probably not be in this section. I'm just throwing that out there just for organizational purposes. So discussion on 2503, purpose of the board, moving through that whole section. Right now we're having a conversation on the third purpose, which is the board shall review all community member complaints and all completed investigations of community member complaints conducted by the department. Open for discussion. Discussion, questions, clarifications. Stephanie, I'm sorry, Board Member Littleton, did Marie provide any comment on this?
She did not, but I do see Jane is on now and she's got her hand up.
Okay. Hi, Jane. Welcome.
Thank you. My apologies, Board Member Jane Gibson. I didn't realize the meeting started almost an hour ago, well, 45 minutes ago. So I'm sorry not to have been on when you first began. So I have missed all this conversation up to this moment, but I think I understand that you're talking about whether or not to narrow the field again to what the original ordinance said. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, I just want to reiterate the arguments that we made for broadening that before, because I still think it's important to broaden it. And that is that we can't really know and don't know the extent to which the Lawrence Police Department is getting complaints, and we don't know the nature of those complaints. We also don't have the ability really to analyze what the community police department relationship is unless we have access to all of the complaints. And what we had said before is that we would start out broad, and if it turns out that we're overwhelmed by the sheer number of complaints or the number of trivial complaints, we might say, then we could revisit that in the ordinance and narrow it at that time. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions, comments? This is Chair Salvini. I have one. I would like to start narrowing it, actually. I think over time, since we started this ordinance until today, I think we've been better informed about how complaints are handled through law enforcement by a presentation from the Lawrence Police Department. And also, I think with new leadership coming in, along with a strategic plan by the city, but more specifically, response plans to the City Gate assessment that was done and recommendations done, I would feel comfortable in narrowing that to, and this is just for discussion, to protected statuses, and for us to come up with our definition of what protected statuses would be, and primarily focus on bias-based policing from the definition that we provide, which includes race, of course, along with other statuses that are recognized as being marginalized in our community.
This is Board Member Stephanie Littleton. You know, I too, like Jenny, I have felt strongly from the beginning there was a necessity to see all complaints. Once again, you know, we've not seen a complaint. So I think in the beginning of this process, that was really important. I'm aware that we do have, or the police department has in place, you know, a new system that's going to have alert systems, so to speak. Mm-hmm. That was some of our biggest concerns, that we're not going to track patterns and having the concerns that would not be identified. But I've moved quite a bit on this. I mean, I think we all realize that as far as workload, that's not going to be reasonable. We're not going to see all of them. But I also do feel very strongly to not just see bias-based complaints. Definitely think it's important that we see the OPA investigations. So I don't feel that we should go back to what the original ordinance says and go back just to the bias-based. But we don't necessarily need to see all. So where do we really go with that language? I don't have a particular, you know, thought on that, but I appreciate the feedback from city staff and their perspective on that. And I think, you know, the reality is, you know, we won't be able to see them all.
Board Member Gibson.
Board Member Jane Gibson. I have an additional concern about narrowing the scope, and that is, well, even if we use our definition of special statuses here, that means that the complainant has to demonstrate that there is bias based on those categories. I think sometimes that's just impossible. And it also means then that if we hear anything that is not a complaint that is not, or if there are complaints that are not based on any of those statuses, then we don't hear them. And that seems to me to be a recipe for a real problem, because let's say we have excessive use of force, but the complainant can't say that it's because the police are biased against some particular category to which they belong, the complainant belongs. And then we don't see the complaint on excessive use of force. I don't know, I mean, I must have missed something here, but I don't know what's in that big group of complaints that I'm hearing some of you being concerned about, that we have that it'll be too much. I don't know what's in there. And I'd like to know what's in there and rule it out after we know what's in there. I don't want to rule it out first because we don't know what it is. We don't know what's in there. And I guess I would just say, I mean, if somebody complains about excessive use of force and they can't demonstrate that they belong to some protected status, and that protected status or bias against a person with that in that protected status is the basis for the complaint, then does that would not come to us? Is that what I'm hearing? Because it seems to me that that based on protected statuses that we lose some really key kinds of complaints.
Board Member Robinson.
Board Member Robinson. It was my understanding that complainants could self-identify an incident of racial or other bias-based policing instead of having the burden of having to prove that it was a racial or other bias-based policing encounter. Is that correct? Am I remembering that correctly?
What are you making? What are you making?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't know. Tony, would you be available to address that?
City Attorney Tony Wheeler. Jenny, Board Member Jenny, could you restate your question? I was a little bit distracted by Randy Larkin's discussion there with his family.
This is Board Member Robinson. So I guess I'm just wanting to clarify if a complainant can self-identify that an encounter was a racial or bias-based policing encounter or complaint, and that then that complaint would directly come to us rather than having to prove that it was a racial or other bias-based complaint. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. Instead of having to wait for that to be proven before it comes to us, I guess. I think
that is City Attorney Tony Wheeler. That is correct. If they believe that the interaction with the police department was on their self-identified belief that it was a bias-based policing, they can make that complaint and it is accepted and looked into. They do not have to demonstrate or prove it or at the outset.
Thank you. Board Member Gibson.
Board Member Jane Gibson, just one more step in that direction. Thank you for that clarification. But as I understand it, and Tony, please correct me if I've got this wrong here, that person can file that complaint and self-identify as a member of a protected class. But that doesn't mean that in the investigation that OPA will necessarily accept that is the basis for whatever the complaint is. That OPA will investigate, in fact, to try to determine whether or not that is the basis of that bias based on that is the cause of the complaint. Is that right?
City Attorney Tony Wheeler, I would call on Brandon to have, if there's someone from the OPA office that can talk about how they manage the complaints that are received to date, they can perhaps help the board with this matter.
Yes, this is Brandon McGuire. I'm going to ask Major McKinley to provide some feedback about that.
Yeah, this is Major Trent McKinley. I am not in the OPA office, but what I can tell you is that complaints are received and given the time and attention regardless of what is being alleged. In other words, if it's a bias-based policing complaint versus another type of OPA complaint, the idea is to prove or disprove that which is being alleged. And so you go through a series of steps to look at what information that you may have available to you to determine if that fact pattern that's been presented to you is in fact what occurred. Does that answer your question?
Board Member Gibson?
This is Board Member Jane Gibson. If I could follow up, thank you for that. So the allegation is that, I mean, okay, well, I think if I've understood correctly, that what we're discussing here is whether or not we want to restrict, this was another proposal. One is that we restrict to the original bias-based policing. Another is that we restrict to anything that OPA investigates, right? And so that's what I think is that latter one that I think I understand we're doing now based on protected classes, which is a bigger category than racial and bias-based policing, as I understand it, because it's our definition. So if I understood correctly, that means that OPA will investigate whatever comes in, but whether or not they will sustain a complaint that is based, if the allegation of the complainant is that they have been discriminated against based on their protected class, there is nothing a priori to suggest that OPA will sustain that complaint, right? Because they will investigate that. And it's possible that they would say, well, you know, the complaint is not supported by our investigation, that it was that this interaction between this police officer and this complainant was about, you know, their houselessness or their income or, you know, some other protected class that we have identified for ourselves. Is that right?
This is Major Trent McKinley. Yes. In essence, again, what we would do is we would investigate the facts that are presented to us, understanding that perceptions may be different between the individual that is making the complaint and maybe the officer's position. But the idea is to then come back, talk about how we have investigated the complaint, what those findings were, and then present that information so that that can be reviewed. That's how I would envision that process going.
Board Member Jane Gibson, thank you for that clarification. I think that still suggests to me that the allegation that there is a bias at work has to be sustained for the complaint to be sustained. And that's another reason I think we need to broaden the scope, because demonstrating that bias is at the root of the motivation of some officer, I think is sometimes going to be impossible. How do you get into the head of a police officer and say, well, this was, you know, a bias based on the fact that this person is homeless or houseless? That's why I think that that's just too narrow. I'm entertaining the possibility that anything that OPA investigates might be a good scope for us, but I still think we don't have enough information to know what kinds of complaints are coming in, and we're ruling out complaints that we know nothing about, even if we just went with whatever OPA investigates.
I might have a follow-up question to that. And that might be, when those complaints come into OPA, if it is expressed by the complainant that they were treated differently, that there was a bias involved, is that addressed within the complaint?
With other behaviors or actions or whatever occurred during the situation to have resolve during that investigation? In other words, is there special attention that is addressed to the potential bias in that complaint, the bias treatment in that complaint? I hope that makes sense.
This is Major Trent McKinley. It does, in the sense that if we had a complaint that alleged that bias existed, that would be something that most likely would not be handled at the street supervisor level. Instead, it would be elevated to an OPA complaint in most cases. From that, we would then look to determine whether or not the facts that have been, or the perceptions and accounts of what happened are supportive or not supportive of the complaint. We have had, I'll give you just an example. We had a belief by a motorist at one point in time that they were stopped based on a protected class, and the officer had stopped them for a headlight out. The officer saw them from blocks away, slowed their car, prepared to turn around, and at night turned around and then stopped them. They had already initiated an action from blocks away, so it became unlikely that the officer would have any indication or idea who might be driving that car. And so in that particular case, bias may not have come into play. I know that that's, again, I need to qualify that I do not work in the OPA office. I've not investigated OPA complaints, but I hope that gives you just some sort of ideas. Sometimes there is a perception that bias has occurred. Given the facts that are presented and the investigation that's done, sometimes what we uncover or show as to how that came about will help prove or disprove that.
This is Chair Salvini. I've got a follow-up question to that then. If there is in the findings of the report very intentional actions, and I know you may not know this, and I appreciate that, to resolve that situation with regard to that bias, is there an opportunity for the complainant to appeal?
This is Major Trent McKinley. Yes, there is an opportunity for those individuals to appeal. That exists now. As we issue findings to our investigation, those are done both orally and in writing. And we also explain the appeal process in writing, that if they care to appeal that, there is an appeal process that they can follow currently. Of course, we realize that you're also examining other language that might be part of that. And of course, that's up for discussion.
Other Board Member Graybill.
Bill.
Bill, you're muted.
Thank you, Chair Salvini. This is Board Member Graybill. I'm a little confused. Is there some kind of specific complaint or opposition to our definition of complaint in the proposed ordinance? Is that what we're discussing?
Yeah, we're discussing that in that paragraph, the third item that says the board shall review all community member complaints. The original ordinance, if I'm not mistaken, addressed only bias-based. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. But down in 2502 sub E, complaint is defined as shall mean any community member's expression of dissatisfaction with law enforcement action, however presented. Is that the essence of what we're trying to decide, whether to keep that in there?
Yes.
Go back to limiting to the original ordinance?
Yes.
Then my next question is there any specific objection to that being retained by any of the members of the board?
I don't think so. Are we ready to move to another? I'm glad we had the discussion to get where we are. But is there any other recommendation to bring forward? Jane, I want to give you a little bit of opportunity here to bring anything that you'd like to come forward to the ordinance based on the resources that we've had.
Do you mean only up to that point or after? I do have one in particular.
Sure.
And maybe you've already discussed it. It's at 12504. And this is, have you already been to 12504?
We've done a couple of things on that.
Did you address Suzanne Valdez's concerns?
This board member, Stephen Wilton, no, and I'm glad you're on now because we really wanted your voice on this.
So you haven't had any conversation about that one?
No.
Okay. Well, just as a reminder, Suzanne Valdez was concerned that any investigation related to a complaint that this board reviews could conflict with investigations that the police department refers to the to Suzanne, to the district attorney. And it was important to her, and I can understand why that we have, and so this is a suggestion that I could make, and I'd love to hear more discussion from the rest of the board, but my suggestion would be that we change the language where we add a line that says something like the CPRB will terminate its review, or maybe we would say, or not pursue further investigation of a complaint upon notification that the complaint has been referred to the district attorney for investigation. Or another way to phrase it might be, if the board is advised by the OPA that the complaint has been or will be referred to the district attorney for criminal or civil investigation, the board will take no further action. And what that does then is eliminate the conflict between an investigation related to our review and an investigation of the district attorney.
Okay.
So several options there.
Sure. This is Chair Salvini. Jane, if you could look at the ordinance and lead us to the area within that section that.
Yeah, let me see if I can locate that. It's
B or-
120, well, 12504A, I believe. Let's see.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that I have the most recent. It should say A something, and it doesn't. Oh, no, it doesn't. 12504A regarding conflict with, okay. A13, can we look down at, maybe it's 13? Oh, mine doesn't have a 13 anymore. I must be have an out-of-date one.
Yeah,
No, there isn't a 13.
Okay. Well,
Right.
let me, if you could give me a second to open that up from the agenda that's posted online. Let me get to that.
I'm going to put that in the chat real quick so you can click the link there.
Oh, thank you, Brandon.
Oh, the wrong keyboard.
I'm guessing it's on page 4.
Mhm.
Well, not in the version I've got open, but so let me see. There, he's got it. Hold on. Okay, now I have it open. Thank you, Brandon. Let's see. 12504. Oh, I know what it was. I was suggesting that we add a 13. That's why there's no 13.
Oh, okay.
So my suggestion was that we add the 13 that eliminates the possibility that any investigation related to a complaint we receive that is referred to the DA will end, that we would terminate our own investigation if the DA is investigating for criminal or civil reasons.
Okay.
And I would certainly defer, I mean, of course, to the members of this board and what you think is important to do here, but I'd like to hear, if possible, from Randy or Tony to know what kind of language is most appropriate if they think I've understood Suzanne Valdez correctly, for one thing.
This is City Attorney Tony Wheeler. We'll let the board discuss, and then after the board's discussed, we'll respond to Board Member Grable's questions. I don't want to interfere on your discussion.
Okay, Jane, do you want to repeat once again what, I'm sorry, I must have missed. Bill, what was it that you?
I didn't hear Bill either, but
Didn't-
Jenny did have her hand up.
Okay. We'll go to Jenny Robinson.
This is Board Member Robinson. And I just think really quickly, Tony, were you talking about what Jane had brought up, not Bill, Gray Bill, is that right?
City Attorney
This is
Tony
Board
Wheeler.
Member Graybill. I have said nothing about what Board Member Jane said. I've had nothing. I don't know what she's talking about.
Thank you.
City Attorney Tony Wheeler, yes, I was responding to Jane's comments. I'm ready to offer some comments, but I did not want to jump ahead of the discussion that the board might want to have. So I was merely stepping aside. So if the board had any additional questions or comments on Jane's idea, they could discuss, and then I would respond to Jane.
Thank you. Mhm.
Thank you, Tony.
Yes.
So Jenny had her hand up.
Jenny, yeah.
Yeah, I like that, Jane. I also wonder if we could ask for an update or a report of the status of the investigation when we meet, if we did terminate an investigation due to the DA taking it on.
So are you suggesting, Jenny, that we get a clarification from the DA, or?
Yeah, just wondering if there would be a way for us to follow that process in some way, even if we did terminate our own investigation.
Board Member Gibson, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion?
Could I, Jane Gibson, board member, could I just, Tony, you said you'd talk after we were done discussing, but, and I don't know if we are, maybe we are. I'd just like to know if I've understood Suzanne Valdez correctly. And if that's true, then you can tell me whether or not you think we're on the right track here.
City Attorney Tony Wheeler, that is my understanding of the district attorney's concerns, that she didn't want this board to potentially interfere with any pending investigations or criminal prosecutions. So I believe that if the board wants to respect that concern and add additional language, we could work on that. I would note that we would have the same concern from the city standpoint of civil litigation, but the district attorney is not involved in civil litigation. Prosecutors prosecute criminal cases only and are not generally involved in civil matters. But there could be a concern, very, very similar concerns for civil. So if it is the board's intention, we could come back with some language or some suggested language, or the board can offer language and we can react to it. It's your preference.
So in there, just real quickly, this Chair Salvini, I heard that certainly we want to respect the recommendation as it was provided, but also you are raising the issue of civil cases as well, and a concern there with civil cases. That correct, Tony?
City Attorney Tony Wheeler, in Jane Gibson's comments, she referred to criminal and civil cases. So I was merely pointing out that, yes, that is a very good point to bring up, that there are concerns in both civil and criminal cases, but the district attorney only handles criminal cases.
Got it. Thank you. Board Member Gibson.
Board Member Jane Gibson, thank you so much, Tony, for that. So if you were to help us by drafting some language, you would separate out criminal investigations by the district attorney and civil investigations by the city, or civil litigation by the city. I guess I don't know which one that is.
City Attorney Tony Wheeler, yes, that would be my suggestion to be consistent with what you were saying.
And to Jenny's point, we could add that the board would be able to ask for an update on investigations that of complaints to which we had stepped aside, from which we had stepped aside.
City Attorney Tony Wheeler, yes, I believe that updates as to the progress of those could be given, or the status of them, yes.
Are you all voting on these recommendations or what?
We are making motions, Jane.
Okay, in that case, I'd like to make a motion that we ask Tony and Randy to draft language that would remove the conflict with the city's civil litigation or the district attorney's criminal investigations when those conflict with our own investigation. And that we would add the ability for the board to ask for status updates of investigations that we had terminated for these reasons.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor, as you heard it. Is there a second? Board Member Grable?
Board Member Grable, I second that.
Okay, a discussion?
And this board member, Stephanie Littleton, I would like to just kind of point out and for food for thought here on the memo that the city provided to us on July 1st. They addressed that very question and did state in there the board could conduct a cursory review of complaints before they are investigated in regards to anything of a criminal matter. So that is maybe something if we're wanting status update and if we maybe want to have a cursory review on the front end as well.
Discussion?
This is Board Member Jane Gibson. I would take that as a friendly amendment and accept that.
Stephanie, Board Member Littleton, are you satisfied with that?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, more discussion? Okay, no more discussion. There's a motion, a second, and a friendly amendment on the floor. The motion was by Jane Gibson, the second by Board Member Grable. All those in favor, yay. All those opposed, nay. Board Member Gibson?
Yay.
Board Member Grable?
Board Member
Board Member Grable, I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit.
Yay.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yay.
Board Member Robinson?
Board Member Robinson, yay.
Board Member Salvini, yay. The motion passes and the total number of votes were 5.
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, I actually didn't vote,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but mine is yes.
Board Member Littleton, yay. Okay, the motion passes. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I had you down already. The vote is still 5. All right. Stephanie, do you have anything else? Bill, Jane, Jenny? Board Member Gibson and then Robinson.
I'm sorry to put you all through this to catch me up just a little, but I wanted to ask if you had considered the Citizens Academy as part of our mandatory training. I know that this looks like another unfunded mandate, but that was one that I thought Stephanie might have brought up, and continuing ed after that. Did you all discuss any of that?
No, thank you.
Stephanie, is that something that I guess you had discussed that before, and I wondered if that was something you wanted to see in the ordinance. I mean, there are things that could happen that aren't in the ordinance, and that's okay too, I guess. But I wanted to be sure that got discussed in case you did think it belonged in the ordinance.
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, thanks, Jane, for bringing that up. I'm going to refer back to the memo from July 1st from the city attorney's office, and I truly appreciate that they weighed in on how may the board access additional training for its members. I did feel very strongly initially about trying to pursue if that needed to be in the ordinance. I don't really believe at this point that it does need to be there. I think from their explanation, I mean, if we simply wanted to go, be it to some of the classes in the academy or whatever that may be for training, I think we need to address that and bring that up and ask to get included. That it doesn't necessarily, to their point, you know, because of budget and what have you, need to make that be mandatory. So I feel very comfortable with it not being in there.
Oh, Jenny.
Board Member Robinson?
Board Member Robinson, are we finished discussing that? I want to make sure before moving on. I just had another point on my list from our last meeting that we wanted to discuss.
Okay, go ahead. I think we are. How's the board? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is Board Member Robinson again. I had on the list to discuss if we would accept anonymous complaints. I didn't know if that was something that we wanted to discuss tonight.
Board Member Gibson?
Board Member Jane Gibson, thank you, Jenny. That is one that came up in my survey question. And I had it on my list to talk about last week. I mean, the last meeting 2 weeks ago. But it occurred to me that this is another one that we don't actually need in the ordinance. We can, you know, if an anonymous complaint comes in, we can accept it and pass it over to OPA, because apparently the police department does accept anonymous complaints. So, I mean, we wouldn't need to say one way or another in the ordinance. We would just accept all complaints. At least that's my understanding.
Okay, other items, Jane?
Board Member Jane Gibson. Okay, I'm going to put you through one more. Did you discuss Marie's issue around the membership requirement for a criminal background check?
Yes, we did, and we already voted.
Can you tell me how that went?
Absolutely. Stephanie, do you want to?
I'm sure. This board member, Stephanie Littleton, Marie Taylor provided me with discussion points, Jane, and I've read through those. And we did vote on it to take it out of our ordinance. If you'd like any particulars from that, I can certainly read you some of that from the discussion.
Now, I'll go back and listen to the tape. I just wanted to know how it came out. Thank you. That's how I would like for it to have come out too. That's great.
Very good. Thank you.
So the vote was good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other work on the ordinance?
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, I do have a note. I'm trying to find where it is about the opt-in. There was some, I think it was in one of the memos.
About, I'm sorry, about what?
Oh, on the, bear with me. I'm just trying to find it in the memo from dated July 2nd from the city. If we could just talk a little bit about, it talks under other considerations under privacy.
Right. Consideration should be given to the privacy of those filing complaints. Some parties making a complaint may not want the complaint to be reviewed by the board. There should be a mechanism available to persons filing a complaint that includes an opt-in for disclosure of complaint details to the board. Disclosures related to personnel information should be consistent with city personnel policies and practices. And what would be your comments on that? Stephanie? Mm-hmm.
This is board member Stephanie Littleton. So the way I'm reading this, I would actually feel that it would be better that we made it as an opt-out versus an opt-in. My thinking is, you know, having more of the complaints. I mean, I think we're asking people to opt in so we have the ability. I'm trying to think how I want to put this, but anyway, I think the opt-out would make more sense, making them have to make a stance of saying, no, I don't want this to be considered. So I just wanted to put that out for discussion, the way that is written.
Mm. And I guess, could there be a conversation about the intent and the benefits for an opt-out as opposed to an opt-in?
That's really what I was wanting, is just have some
Okay.
on that.
Of course, the benefits there for the complainant. Okay, any conversation, discussion? Board Member Gibson, Board Member Robinson.
Let's let Jenny go before me. I think she had her hand up before I put mine up.
Okay, Board Member Robinson.
Board Member Robinson, thank you, Jane. I agree with Stephanie. I think opt out instead of opt in would be a little more mistake proof, I guess, and would allow people who feel strongly that we shouldn't review their complaint to make that known.
Okay, very good. Board Member Gibson.
Board Member Jane Gibson. If it came to having to choose one or the other, then certainly opt out is better, but I don't see that there's a problem with the ordinance as it is. I don't know why we need one or the other. I don't know why we need either one. We are all sworn to confidentiality. It's not as though bringing it to the review board, which was created by the city commission for the benefit of this community, is somehow putting people at risk of a violation of their privacy.
More conversation?
You know, this board member, Stephanie Littleton, I mean, maybe there's more to it than I'm kind of missing there with that feedback. But I was just looking for, thinking in the totality that we'd want, obviously, more complaints, you know, coming to the board versus not. And so not being an automatic, you know, where they have to opt in. And so that's how I read it. And I know that's not in there at this point, but I'm just taking in consideration for that feedback.
Mm-hmm. Brandon? Mm-hmm.
This is Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. I don't mean to get insert myself into the board's discussion, board members' discussion, but maybe just to add a little bit of clarity about what we were thinking when we offered that thought, Stephanie, is that the way that the definition of complaint is crafted, in that, and you just discussed it, so I should have had it up here in front of me. Any expression of dissatisfaction, any community member's expression of dissatisfaction with law enforcement action, however presented. And so I think that that can be extremely broad, extremely broadly interpreted and applied. And somebody may express dissatisfaction with a law enforcement action without any understanding that that's going to be reviewed by the Community Police Review Board, including all body camera video, any notes, records taken on the scene or in a conversation with a supervisor or a member of the police department. And so I just think that was the consideration was, does the board want to have access to all of that evidence, all of that documentation and evidence related to every expression of dissatisfaction, knowing that some people may not realize at all that their image on body camera, their statements on body camera, is going to find its way in front of this board.
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, thank you for the explanation, because I felt like I didn't really understand the totality of what was being said there. So thank you. I'll keep that for under consideration, though.
Absolutely. Brandon, this is Chair Salvini. If you could you point out the place specifically in the ordinance that consideration came from?
And so we're looking really, I think, at the definitions, 12502.
Okay, just making sure. Okay. Board Member Gibson?
Board Member Jane Gibson. I guess one of the reasons I would not want either an opt-in or an opt-out on there is that I don't think we need to make complaints, make it harder in any way for people to lodge their complaints. Having said that, though, I take Brandon's point that the way we've written E is really broad. And so I wonder if we want to say, however presented to the CPRB or the LPD for review, something so that you just don't have somebody who's on a body cam saying, you know, you guys have done something I didn't like, and I think you did it for this reason, and that would be construed as a formal complaint for review. If the police department didn't think it was for review, then seems like that's kind of a no-brainer that we don't need to see it either.
Okay, other comments? Any action? Okay. Other issues regarding the ordinance? Okay. I'm seeing no hands. All right, well, let's go ahead and take a pause here. We voted specifically on the revisions through motions to revise the ordinance. And so what we'll do is, and Brandon, will you take this and go ahead and revise it then? And it's still a working draft. Is everyone still in agreement with that? I don't think we need to take action at this point. It's a moving document. So I think we're done with this agenda item. Is everyone in agreement?
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, there's actually one more thing. I apologize.
That's fine.
We have not discussed it now. It was about hiring an outside investigator. That was another thing we had on our list of discussion.
I think that was also addressed in the staff reviews, wasn't it? Oh, I think.
Yeah, it is in there.
This is Board Member Jane Gibson. Stephanie, wasn't that about, I mean, I thought that there may have been some misunderstanding there because it seemed to suggest that we were trying to assume the authority to require the hiring of an outside investigator. And I think that the way that we wrote it is that we would request of the city manager that he or she hire an outside investigator. Am I wrong about that? I think it says we would request it.
That's
not that we would require it.
Right. That's how I thought we wanted it too.
Can somebody locate that? Where is that in
the ordinance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There it is. It's one, dadgummit, you know, you go up 5 pages, 12504.
Uh-huh.
Under D2.
D2, right.
Mm-hmm.
It may return to the open meeting and vote to request that the city manager appoint an independent third-party investigator to investigate the community member complaint. But then the next sentence says, upon receipt of that request, the city manager will appoint an independent third-party investigator. Maybe that's the sticking point there, because we say we would request it, but then we say that the city manager will do it. Is that the sticking point? Maybe that's what I misunderstood anyway in the memo.
Yes, this is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. That sentence is the sticking point.
How can we fix that, Randy?
I think just say the city manager may at his discretion or may in his or her discretion appoint one. That way you're not mandating it be done, and if there's no money to have it done, then we're not running into cash basis problems or any other problems relating to the city manager form of government. But that would take care of it.
Well, I'm good with that. There may be others who disagree.
This is
Okay.
Board Member Hamilton. I am good with that too. I think we should discuss maybe motion on that.
I just want to remind everyone that we're on page 5 of the ordinance, and we're at D2. And the recommendation is to modify the last sentence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Randy, would you be able to propose some language there to reflect what our agreed intent is on that?
Randy, you're muted.
Yes, this is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. I think all we need to do is substitute the word will with may.
Okay, that sounds good. Is there a motion? Thank you.
So moved, Board Member Jane Gibson.
Board Member Gibson has made the motion to strike will, add may in D2 of section
12504.
12504. Thank you. Is there a second?
This Board Member Stephen Littleton, I second that motion.
Seconded by Board Member Littleton. Discussion. If there's no discussion, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor, yay. All those opposed, nay. Board Member Gibson?
Yay.
Board Member Graybill?
Board Member Graybill, yay.
Board Member Littleton?
Member Robinson, yay.
Board Member Salvini, yay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes. It passes. Thank you. Thank you, Randy, for your assistance. Okay, just to review what we've gone through, there is some work that's going to be done before the next meeting. Is that correct, Jenny?
This is Board Member Robinson. I apologize. I have to take my dog outside. Yes, so I'm going to go through the ordinance prior to our next meeting and determine the best spot for us to put where we'll note that the complainant will receive notice that we've received their complaint.
Right, thank you. Does that sound good, Bill?
Yes, as far as I'm
Okay.
concerned.
Very good. All right, thank you all very much. As we'll go ahead and go to item 2, and that's to receive the annual report. Brandon, do you want to make any comments about that?
Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. I have updated, revised the annual report to reflect the feedback from, and this is the sort of forward-looking goals for the coming year from the chair and vice chair. And I also made one other revision just to include, I believe, this meeting and the total meeting count over the last year, since this is sort of a July through July reporting period. And so with those revisions, I'm open to any additional board members' feedback. If the board is agreeable to those revisions and approves of the report, then we will accommodate placing it on the August 3rd City Commission meeting.
Okay, is there a Board Member Gibson?
Board Member Jane Gibson, I would like to talk about 3, 4, sorry, yeah, 3 and let's start with 3. Work with the Lawrence Police Department to develop an engagement and prevention services plan to increase community engagement. What is a prevention services plan?
Is that on the last part?
It's on page 2, number 3, the forward-looking section.
Yeah. Stephanie, do you want to take that? Oh, thanks. Or do you want me to?
This board member, Stefano, if you would speak to that, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, it was I guess the conclusion that we made there, or I did, was to, I'm sorry, I'm still scrolling there. On number 3, we've talked about historically that we want to work with the LPD on an engagement planning, a more robust engagement planning. I think I put the word prevention in there because the more engagement that we have, it answers to potential prevention services. So that's why it's there. I mean, it can be certainly changed, but that was the intent, that increased engagement, addressing very intentionally the term prevention services as a result of engagement potentially. Anyway, that's that.
Board Member Jane Gibson. Tanya, I don't understand what prevention services are. I mean, what are we preventing?
Well, preventing risk. The increased engagement, and I guess the thinking I had was the more engagement with your community, the better relationships that law enforcement builds with neighborhoods and communities, that and the presence of those relationships automatically reduces, risk of potential behaviors that are obstacles to healthy neighborhoods. That was just a general thing.
No, I appreciate the argument. I think it's confusing to say and prevention services, and I think what your argument is captured with the notion of engagement services plan. And I would just suggest that we strike the and prevention because I found it mysterious.
It's social work language, Jane.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. It's just not my field, so I didn't get it.
That's okay. Are you with me there, Jenny?
That's right. Jenny is also in social work.
That's lingo. Okay. Okay. So it's recommended that we strike out prevention services and just leave engagement plan, and I'm good with that. So that's going to be an edit that's included for the whole vote, okay?
And on number 4, if I may, Board Member Jane Gibson, Tanya, continue work with Lawrence Police Department and other stakeholders to revise existing ordinance for the Community Police Review Board. As I recall, the board had set a goal of submitting the ordinance to the City Commission, and I can't remember if maybe it was November. It was this year though. So I wondered if this is a forward-looking document, maybe we would like to say to revise and submit existing ordinance for the Community Police Review Board.
Okay. Brandon, did you get that? To provide and submit the ordinance? Okay. Thank you, Jane.
Well, I have one more, but maybe somebody else has something.
Yeah.
No? Okay. Maybe I'm a nitpicker. On number 5, I'd like some clarification of what we're talking about, that the city staff could ask us to do short-term committee work across the city. What are we talking about there?
I think there are certainly, because we're serving the community and we're an identified group, that we may be called upon at any time to serve in a short-term or an ad hoc capacity with work across the city. It might be serving on a committee that might review a group that the city's working with to provide services to the city, for example. Brandon, if you can help me out. I mean, I know that there are a few of us that have served on assessing the groups that came in where we made the selection to Citygate for the assessment project. So that's what I'm referring to there, is at any time, any of our board members may
serve even more than serving on the board by being involved or being invited to serve more for meeting city needs. Brandon, does that?
Yes, Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. I think that those are good examples. We have a police chief recruitment that is coming up, and I could see opportunities potentially for committee work or panel, participation on an interview panel. Those sorts of opportunities where we would want to extend the invitation to the board members to join us for some sort of time-bound focused project. And we've had a few of those opportunities, and I think it's provided really good insight from the community perspective and the board's perspective over the last year, and we'd like to just be able to continue doing that with you all over the next year.
Thank you, Brandon and Tanya, Board Member Jane. I'm okay with it.
Okay, thank you. I'm really glad I didn't have you for a class, Jane Gibson, for the record.
I'm sorry to say that there are a few thousand students who can't say the same.
Oh, no, I'm just kidding, you know. Okay, anything else? All right, is there a motion with the revisions that have been presented?
Jane Gibson, board member, so moved that we approve the revised CPRB annual report.
Thank you. Board member Robinson?
Second that motion, and also, Board Member Robinson, and also Alex had their hand raised.
Okay, very good, thank you. I can't see that on my screen. Alex, we're gonna go ahead and take a vote and then we'll get to you. So let's go, yays and nays. Board member Gibson?
Yay.
Board member Grable?
Board Member Graybill, yay.
Board member Littleton?
Board Member Littleton, yes.
Board member Robinson?
Board Member Robinson, yay.
Board member Salvini, yay. Okay, we've got 5 affirmed votes for the report. Thank you all so much. We're going to go to Alex Kerr. Alex?
Good evening again. I'm just going to say this very quickly. The community, I think I said this at the last meeting 2 weeks ago. The community believes that this should be approved, and we think it would do well. And we liked it, liked the report. I and multiple people have read the annual report and liked it. So we want to thank this Community Police Review Board for doing this, and the city staff for working on this. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly say that. So yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Alex. I too would like to thank the city staff for putting the report together and for doing such a great job and giving us so much information that we could do some more work on the ordinance tonight. And our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 12th. Is there a motion? Board member Robinson?
Board Member Robinson, before we adjourn, I believe this is Bill's last meeting, is that right?
Oh, yes. Bill.
So Bill, just wanted to thank you for your service to our community and to this board.
Yes,
Very
thank
good.
you, Bill.
Thank you very much, Bill, for all you've contributed since day one.
I have a question. Board member Jane Gibson, is this Thursday, what is it, August what?
At 12?
And is that at 7 or 5:45?
That'll be at 7.
Thank
correct?
you. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Member Gibson, be on time, right?
I'll do my very, very best, I promise. I thought I was early tonight, and I just saw that memo in my email from Brandon. I was just reeling. I couldn't believe I'd missed 45 minutes of the meeting. Anyway.
Thank you, Jane.
Board member Robinson?
I second
Okay, all right, no discussion? Again, Bill, thank you so much for your time and your service. All the,
one more meeting.
okay, we're ready to vote. All those in favor, yay. Gibson?
Yay.
Grable?
Grable,
Yay.
Littleton,
Yes.
Robinson,
Board Member Robinson, yay.
Salvini, yay. Okay, thank you all so much for some good work tonight, and we'll see you in August.
All right. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye, thank you.